the parties would like to, and in fact, I don't have to assume, because I know in the stipulation, when you look to place it on the consent calendar, you stipulated to incorporate the record from the short variance hearing into this hearing. Would the parties still like to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Karakabaru? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Before we do that, though, I should check because we have a new board. So we have 2 new members of the board that I don't believe were there for the short variance. So I'm going to ask each of them in turn whether they have reviewed the record and the hearing for the last short variance hearing, and are they prepared to have it incorporated in today's hearing. And I'll start first with Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Yes, I have.
Thank you. And Dr. Bernstein.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the record is therefore incorporated. As the parties are aware, the parties did request to have this placed on the consent calendar. However, under our rules, a board member may remove it and request a hearing, and thank you for appearing today, when they feel that additional matters of evidence have not yet been received and they have additional questions. And so at least one board member has questions, and so we're going to proceed with the hearing today. So before we do that, let's take rather than starting from scratch, as we do in these types of cases where a member has determined to take a matter off consent, we're not going to start with a brand new hearing, but rather, as we just did, we're incorporating the hearing and the evidence and testimony from the previous hearing. In addition, we have received 2 declarations from Mr. Tony Karakabaru. First of all, the declaration of Tony Karakabaru number 1, which was date stamped June 25th and presented with the request to place the matter on consent, and I'm going to mark that. We'll mark them, since we're incorporating the last record. We'll continue. Do you know, Madam Clerk, what number we're up to?
Yes, we are at number 7 for the petitioner.
Okay, so we will mark that first declaration as exhibit number 7. We also received a second declaration of Mr. Karakabaru, and that one is date stamped July 16th. We're going to mark that as exhibit number 8. We also received a proposed findings and decision from both parties, but I'm going to mark that for the district. Should I mark that for the district, Ms. Barrera?
That's fine.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do you know what letter we are up to?
Yes, we're at letter B as in boy.
Thank you. So we will mark that, which is date stamped June 25th, also as, we'll mark that also, and it will be exhibit B as in boy. And if you wish, I am going to start the hearing. Well, first of all, I'm going to ask you to please rise to be sworn in, and anyone else who wishes to testify today or may testify today, please rise to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to give you the opportunity for any opening statement you wish to make at this time, and then I'm going to open it up for questions from the board.
I don't have any opening statements.
Thank you. Ms. Barrera, do you have any opening statement?
I guess briefly, as you mentioned, this matter was on the consent calendar, and we're basically relying on the record from the short variance hearing, for today's hearing. I don't believe, I haven't talked to Mr. Karakabaru since the declaration was filed, but it was my understanding, at least as of that time, that the engine had not run since the short variance hearing, except for, I think, 7/10 of an hour for maintenance and testing. So the facts haven't changed since the short variance hearing. And the district does not oppose the issuing of the regular variance.
Thank you. And before I, thank you very much. And before I open it up for questions, I should just give a little background, because I know, Mr. Karakabaru, you may not have the benefit of understanding that, well, now you do. But since the last hearing, the board has undergone a new makeup. Obviously, we have 2 new members of the board. And so while at the last hearing, the short variance, the board at that time was able to make all of the findings. We do have new members, and so they may have additional questions. In fact, I believe one or both of them do. And so that's the reason why, even though I may have indicated at the last hearing that it might have been a good idea to be on consent. But you never know what will happen. And so here we are, and hopefully we can move forward today. Okay. With that, I'm going to open it up for board members who may have questions. Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Karakabu, I noted on the document that you are a mechanical maintenance supervisor, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, are you an electrician?
No.
Did you have an electrician on staff when these outages occurred?
Yes, we have 2 electricians on staff.
And what was their determination? That it was a regular outage that was causing this?
Yeah, there was a regular outage
Okay, how do you know that?
because some of the other residential areas and some of our other similar lift stations in the area were out of power as well.
Okay. Do you know for a fact whether you are on the same circuit that they are?
I didn't verify that.
Okay,
no,
so
but I
you
do have
didn't,
that
you didn't call,
information.
I don't mean to overspeak on what you were saying, but what I want to know is you did not call SCE at any point in time,
No,
and neither did your electricians.
no,
Did they conduct a voltage test with a voltage meter?
they did.
And what was their determination?
That there was no power at the main.
Okay, but the voltage meter, when they took that test, and you had no power at all, you didn't really know the cause of the outage.
No, we were more concerned with just handling the situation and getting the station running.
All right, I had another question on here. You stated in the document that it was caused by the weather, the outage. Do you know that for a fact?
No, but I guess it would be an assumption. We had a pretty severe storm, and so oftentimes that results in
Okay.
power outages.
Well, yes and no, because if it's due to the weather, normally that means a tree has come down, pulled down the pole and or the wires, and so normally that is a long outage. It's not normally on and off, intermittent. And my concern about all of this is that it's a very good possibility that you had a voltage problem, not due to the weather exactly. The weather could have
I'm
started.
sorry, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, do you have a question?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm asking, since you did not verify whether it was due to the weather, you and the electricians made the assumption that it was due to the weather. Is that correct?
That is correct, although in the past, we see fluctuations or brownouts typically because of weather. So I guess we just assumed it was a similar situation.
That's my concern, that there was an assumption there. Now, if I have statements, do you want me to wait on
We're going to wait
statements?
till deliberation,
Okay.
please.
Let me see. The only other question I had was for the attorney. May I ask that?
Well, first, we're going to finish with any witness questions.
Okay, I want to see if you had already answered all of the other questions that I had asked of how many outages did you experience due to SCE on your document. I noted that and took a look at that, as well as the duration of each of the outages and whether you had called or not. And based on the fact that it was on different dates, on neither occasion did you call the electricity company, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. For the time being, those are all my questions.
Thank you. Can you confirm for the record, Mr. Karakaburu, have you had any outages since, or the need to run the generator other than for maintenance?
No, just maintenance.
And that's since May?
That is correct.
Okay. And if there was a voltage problem, would you be seeing that more often than just during the bad weather time that you saw during the two outages? Do you know?
No, I don't know. Typically, we don't. We see fluctuations throughout the year, whether they're brownouts or what. We don't typically investigate or call Edison to follow up on what the reason was, but
And just so I understand, a voltage issue, is that an issue with Edison, or is that an issue with the equipment that you run?
it can be either. It can be on our side or their side.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Bernstein, did you have any questions?
Good morning. Thank you for coming this morning. I appreciate it. Sorry to bring you all the way from Lake Arrowhead. I have two questions. One, Lake Arrowhead is a high fire risk area, correct? And currently there's protocols that have been put in place with regards to proactive power shutoffs. Given the, has your organization put in any kind of protocol in place for that to prepare for those?
No, we have attended some of the meetings that were kind of made us aware of these new rules that they're going to implement. But no, we're going to still go with the same protocol that we normally do if any power outage.
Okay. Even though it appears as the potential for that to happen on a more frequent basis is there. Okay, second question I have is that in reviewing the case, it appears as if there was a problem with actually getting the equipment, that there seemed to be a sole source to supply for either the circuitry board or the automatic transfer switch. How have you approached that so to make sure that you don't get caught in betwixt and in between with other people having to supply? Are there other sources for that equipment, and do you have more on hand? If that's been answered, I apologize, but I just want to make sure.
No, that's a good question. After the second occurrence, we decided just to get rid of the automatic transfer switch altogether and buy a new one. Right. And so at that point, we went to a more reliable brand, or at least one we've had better luck with. And so we installed that, and we purchased a second one to have on hand for a spare for not only that station, but some of our other stations. It doesn't work for every one of our stations, but it'll work for a number of them. And so, yeah,
Okay, so you have at least an ace up the sleeve just in case.
yes, correct. We don't like to be in that position, so.
With regards to outages due to vegetation, does the district have any type of vegetation management plan with regards to making sure that they don't interfere with the power lines, or have you discussed that with SoCal Edison?
No, but at least on our property, we take care of any and all vegetation issues that may cause power outages. That's something we do regularly.
Okay, with just one last question, Madam Chair. With regards to that proactive power shutoff, do you think that that would be appropriate to have a discussion regarding that, given the potential for that to cause a power outage on a more consistent basis?
Yes, we have, informally talked about it. I don't know what measures we can put in place, so I guess there isn't much of a protocol except for just respond as usual if there's a power outage and make sure that the station's running properly.
And at the very least, at least you do have backup equipment now, so you're not waiting on somebody to ship you.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I see it in my notes, but I just want to, for the record, just go over, I have in my notes that from 2017, the generator ran only 12 hours. Is that correct?
I have that here. I'd have to look at the calculations, but if that's what you have.
If you don't have it, then I'm just going to rely on the record.
From 2017, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably, I'm only looking at the one sheet, not the previous one, but yeah, it's just a couple hours from 2018 till now.
And similarly, 2018 was my next question.
Yes.
Okay, yes. And the majority of the time that the generator ran this year was due to the error and the glitch from the original supplier sending the circuit board
Correct.
incorrectly. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Any other questions about evidence that we don't have in the record? Yes, Mr. Senator? Okay. An abundance of
Mr.
respect for each other.
Kabaru, if I recall from the last hearing, the failure was for the generator kick in was because the ATS, the automatic transfer switch, didn't work.
Yes, that is correct.
And typically, how long does it, if it's working properly, when does it kick in? Does it look at the voltage fluctuation or within a few?
It does. I believe that station has like a 30-second delay. It waits to make sure that it's not just a glitch before it transfers power over. And then same coming back onto Edison power.
So when it first occurred, no, this is a remote site, am I correct?
Yes.
And how can you refresh, how long did it take you, you to respond, or you or your staff to respond to, and to figure out that it didn't turn over and that you had to do it manually?
I don't have the time frame, but it was probably within 20 minutes. We have a person on call that receives an alarm from SCADA, and it was late one night. I remember that individual responding, and then myself as well. It was maybe less than an hour before we responded and got power restored, as far as generator power.
Right. And I recall that you made the decision to keep it running because you were not sure if that'll work again if you turn it off once Edison Power came back on.
Correct. Yeah, we did a number of tests, and at that point, we determined the automatic transfer switch was not functioning. And so, being that station is so close to the lake, we decided the best course of action would just be to leave it running on a reliable source of power because we could no longer trust the transfer switch.
And then the circuit board that you replaced subsequently also failed the second time? The replacement failed, is that?
Yes. It was a different part the second time.
Or a different part? So that's when you decided to replace it completely with another ATS system?
Correct. I wasn't sure what else was compromised, so I thought it would be the safest bet just to replace the entire unit and not gamble with that any further.
And so the generator kept running while you were waiting for the system, the new parts to be sent to you?
Yes, correct.
And total, how much time did you go over the 200 hours?
That's a good question.
I believe you provided it before, and I couldn't find my
I
notes.
believe it was approximately 415 hours total, but I don't know where I saw that.
Yes, 414 hours total is what I have on my notes from last time.
So, just another last question. Do you test those, so when you do the annual or monthly testing, is there any testing done to see if the ATS system is working properly?
Yes, that's how we do it. We kill the power at the main. That way we are testing it like in a
Safely.
true circumstance to do the transfer switch. And so, yeah,
So that's part of your ongoing maintenance,
correct. That's done monthly.
monthly? Okay, thank you.
Senator?
Seems you had two failures. One was February 14, and I was left with the impression that the weather caused the problem. And then you had another failure on March 19th, same year. Was the weather a problem then, or do you know?
I don't know. I feel confident that it was the contributing factor, but I don't have the evidence to prove how and why.
Well, calendar of events tells us when there was a weather problem, and we were convinced that on the 14th there was such a problem, based on the testimony. But I didn't take too much notice on the 19th, but there was a failure there also. I think he claimed the failure there was the circuit board. So it was electrical, not maybe the weather.
I'm sorry, what?
It was the circuit board failure,
Correct.
not caused by the weather. Not on the 19th. It was same thing on the 14th and the 19th.
Yeah, but a power fluctuation or dip in the power can cause the the failure to the circuit board. That's what we think happened.
Well, I understand if you get if it zaps the system, you know what I mean by that. That means you had a power surge. But is there any evidence that Edison told you there was a power surge at that time?
It's kind of difficult to get a clear answer from Edison when we have had to contact them in regards to a brownout.
And you ordered a new circuit board and made it have it expedited to you.
Correct.
And what was the problem why you didn't get it right away?
That was, unfortunately, was on their end from the supplier, and they shipped it regular shipping rather than next day like they should have. And then we spent the next couple days trying to get that expedited, but it was out of their hands from what I was told. FedEx would not ship it.
Where were they shipping it from?
I don't recall the exact location, but I believe it was on the East Coast.
Not from a foreign country?
No, it was a U.S. distributor.
I mentioned something about it, buying that was coming from a foreign country, as I recall. And I said, you could buy it in the U.S.
No, the one we purchased was in the U.S. It was the only one we were able to locate. In fact, some of our distributors looked at some of their suppliers and were unable to find any other.
Well, the reason why I recall, because I suggested at the very end, Buy American and Texas Instrument used to make these circuit boards. And so I was left with the impression that it was coming from someplace outside the United States of America.
No, it was purchased in the U.S.
How many times did this failure have occurred where you can't blame the weather for it?
This looked like a circuit board failure?
Yeah.
I can think of one other time where we've had a circuit board failure, but we're able to fix it by using some of the parts and resoldering it on the circuit board.
That's what you told me. You make those repairs in-house.
Correct. This one was beyond repair. That's the only reason why we didn't do that with this one.
All right. I was concerned then, and I'm concerned now with the testimony, but carry on.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta has another question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to be clear on this. On the March 19th outage, you're claiming that it was not due to the weather, but yet you don't have any evidence. You did have circuit board failure. So even at that point, you had fluctuations. You didn't call SCE to verify whether it was fluctuation on their side or your side. Is that correct?
Can I stop? We're misstating the record. We did receive evidence at the last hearing of the weather conditions at the times of the outages.
He just stated that the February
Okay,
14th was due to weather and the 19th was not due to weather. Is that correct? That's what I want to verify.
You're asking if
If
the February 14th was due to weather and whether or not March 19th was due to weather?
Correct.
Both? Give me 1 second. I have, an exhibit from the previous hearing for the February 14th, but I don't have any weather information for what took place on March 19th.
Just one question on that as a follow-up. You went over the 200 hours after the February 14th,
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so
The
that's-
second one was a short,
so that's where the violation occurred.
yes.
My other question is, have you ever called SCE to conduct a load assessment and/or a quality of power test at any time, whether it was due to these outages and/or at any other time before or after these outages?
I personally have not, but we do have records of doing that at all of our locations with Edison.
In this particular instance, with this particular equipment, when was that done?
Actually, Edison did come out and verify power. I don't have the date, but it was around the time the first occurrence took place.
And what was their finding?
That their power on their side was restored, and that's when we were able to confirm that we had more problems on our side. So I believe that was the 14th, February 14th. Edison came out to verify.
Okay, but you stated earlier and on the documents that you did not call Edison, and now you're saying that you did?
Well, I didn't call him asking him what the power, or the cause of the power interruption was.
Okay, but the question is, when did they come out and do the assessment? Did they come out
It was.
because you called them?
I called them, yes.
Okay, because you said that you didn't call them.
Well, I believe your question was, did I ask them what the cause of the power?
And on
fluctuation?
my,
Oh, wait, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, you can ask the question. Please let her finish the question, but then please allow the answer before you ask another question.
do you want to continue or do you want me to continue my question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Based on the questions that were originally submitted to you, the question was whether you had ever called them in regards to these outages, and your answer was no. And my question was also, okay, you didn't call them. I asked if you ever called them regarding doing a load assessment and/or quality of power testing. You're saying you did. I want to know the date when that was done, because you're saying you did not call them.
Okay. Previously, I think I was just referring to the cause of the power outage. But yes, we did call them that morning, February 14th, and they confirmed that power was restored on their end.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we close the record? Anything that has not already been covered? Senator?
Please. If the power was restored on February 14th, how do you exceed the hours at that point in time?
That has been covered in all the testimony.
No,
But if
no.
you'd like to succinctly answer that, but the entire first hearing was dedicated to that. But Mr.
I'm trying
Karakaburu,
to
you may
lay a
answer.
foundation, Madam Chair. Please answer.
It was due to the automatic transfer switch not being able to transfer power from generator to Edison.
So when the surge occurred on the 14th, it zapped the system, which is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Circuit board, yes or no?
Yes. Something happened due to the power fluctuation that caused the damage to the automatic transfer switch.
So even though the power was on it, according to Edison, you could not operate because your system was zapped.
Well, we could operate on Edison, but we were running the risk of if they lost power, we would have nothing to transfer to. We would have to manually get there in time to make that transfer ourselves. And because of that location, we are very limited on time, depending on what time of day it is as well. Because of the sewer flow during the day or night, I made that determined that it was safer to run it on the generator rather than have to respond manually at any hour of the day.
Then what period of time, when you started running it on the generator, that you ran it on the generator?
That day, February 14th.
Until what, the 15th, 16th, 17th?
Let me see, my records show March 1st, we received the circuit board and it was stalled that day.
So from the 14th to March 1st, you were running on a generator?
Correct, with the, we did make a couple stops where we turned it off to check the generator, check the oil, make sure everything was running properly, and then turned it back on.
Okay, so that's like 15 days. Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for anything that has not been covered yet in this hearing? It was covered in detail. In excruciating detail. Any other questions for Mr. Karakaburu? Thank you. Did anybody need to hear from any district witnesses who may be available today for any evidence or testimony that has not already been entered into the record? Okay, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, maybe if you can ask Ms. Barrera if she has a witness to cover your question.
I do have an inspector available.
Is that sufficient for your question? Okay.
Okay. The district calls Vanessa Tenick. Will you please state and spell your name for the record?
Vanessa Tanik, Vanessa, last name Tanik. I'm an air quality inspector too.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, thank you for appearing today. My question to you is, did you ever verify whether this outage that the Mr. Caracaboo is stating was due to the weather? Did you call the utility and verify that?
No, I did not.
Thank you.
Any other questions that were not covered? Anyone? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stanek. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to ask if any member of the public wishes. Oh, Senator has a question.
Why didn't you call to check?
We were relying on the testimony from the defendant.
Well, at the time the incident occurred, and you were an inspector at that time?
No, I inspected on May 17th.
On May 17th, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Valagopalan.
Mr. One of the condition of the order and the short variance was they send the weekly records to you. Have you been receiving them?
Yes, I have been.
And what does the record show thus far?
So far, it shows only that the monthly maintenance has been performed and no outages have occurred. The last hour meter reading shows 30.2 hours.
And so how many hours have they run for maintenance since the order?
1.2.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the record unless there are any other questions. Okay, thank you. I'm going to close the record. Well, actually, I'm not closing the record yet. First, I asked if there were any member of the public who wishes to be heard. I see none. Now I will close the record. And I will ask Mr. Karakaburu if you'd like to give any closing statement with any fuller description of what you're requesting today.
I guess the only thing I'd like to say is that I apologize if I was not clear. I thought the first hearing, we covered everything pretty thoroughly. My intent was never to leave anything in the dark or kind of hide anything, and so I just want to make sure that if that is how any of you feel, that was not my case. I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Ms. Barrera, your closing, if you have one.
Is that on? The district does not oppose the granting of the regular variance. I think while the power outages are relevant and certainly an appropriate issue to be questioned about, I think ultimately the variance was necessary because of equipment issues related first to the failure of the circuit board and then the problems with the automatic transfer switch. And with respect to the equipment failures, that is what ultimately caused this engine to exceed the hourly limit. And once that limit was exceeded, they are operating in violation. And that hourly limit will not reset until the end of the year. So it just seems like a variance is needed. And again, the district does not oppose the issuance of this variance.
Thank you. Board members, I'm just going to begin the discussion and then we'll add all our voices. I'm just going to go through the 6 findings because I believe as we were able to make them for the short variance, so can we make them for the regular variance. And as Ms. Barrera just ended her closing with the first finding, which is Lake Arrowhead is in violation. Once they exceed that 200 hours that's allowed in their permit, they continue to be in violation until that 200 hours resets, regardless of whether they're running it just for maintenance or if there are other weather occurrences or things that would normally caused or any other reason, the use of this engine. I wanted to move, though, just to reframe it for all the board members, why we're really here and why it is that the short variance was granted and the board at that time was able to make the findings. And that is comes into play in the beyond reasonable control, because I want to draw the board members' attention to the fact that under the Health and Safety Code, this is an essential public service. It is, the lift station is for sewage treatment, and I want to also draw board members' attention to the reason why a variance like this and the generator is so important, and that is Exhibit 2, and I'm hoping that the new board members have this, and if not, we can take a look at it, which is a picture of how close this lift station is to a wet well and Lake Arrowhead, which is drinking water. And so when we talk about beyond reasonable control, it is very important to note that the initial power outage caused the running of the generator. However, it was the fact that the circuit board was not working and the automatic transfer switch was not working. And so it had to be replaced, and it was beyond the control of the petitioner to get it replaced in a timely fashion because of a glitch that had nothing to do with them in the shipment from the only supplier that had a circuit board. But the decision was made by the petitioner to keep running the generator because that switch, that automatic switch, was not working, and it was during a very wet weather period when it would be very easy for that lift station to overflow, and it is above the wet well, and so closely situated. And so it's due to that glitch that was beyond their control that I can find, and the fact that it is an essential public service, and that the Health and Safety Code directs us to consider that in making the findings and the impact that would occur to the public as a result. I believe that requiring compliance, which would mean not running the generator at all, would be an unreasonable or arbitrary taking of property, again, because of the importance of this generator and its function. So if there is a power outage, it needs to run. So that is an unreasonable taking of property, which would affect the drinking water, most likely in Lake Arrowhead. I believe the closing, and plus, or fines, which would occur every time maintenance is done, even, just to make sure this generator is working. I believe that the closing or taking would be without a corresponding benefit in reducing air contaminants. First of all, we know the emissions profile of this engine, 0.41, what is this, pound? Is it pounds per day or pounds per hour? Thank you. Per hour of CO, 0.44 pounds per hour of NOx, 0.39 of VOC, 0.02 PM10, 0.001 of SOx. And while that's not nothing, it's relatively small compared with what could occur if that engine is not exercised for maintenance on a monthly basis and or used in an emergency power outage. During the period the variance is in effect, reducing excess emissions just means not using it when it's not either being maintained or for emergency, and I think it's good to know that since the short variance was in effect, there has been no other use other than the 1.2 hours for maintenance. And finally, monitoring is just a simple matter of monitoring the hours of its usage, which clearly has been done in this matter. But I do believe there's others who have, and I'll turn first to Ms. Verdugo Peralta, who had some comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments are going to be based on my experience working in the planning department for SCE, working out in the field with the service crews, working in the phone center, receiving the calls for outages. I worked there for many years and still deal with them the majority of my family, they all are Edison employees and or retirees, so I have a long list of past experience of why I ask these questions of you and what my statements are going to be. I don't believe that there was a need to utilize that generator as many hours as was used based on the fact that you didn't call Edison. I asked whether you had, in the questions that I presented and AQMD presented to you, whether you had called them, and you stated no. Now you're stating that there was a call in regards to the load assessment and quality of power. We don't have any record of that. Had you called them on the days of the outage, based on the fact that you had intermittent power, it wasn't a long period of time. If it was a long period of time, I concede that it would have been due to weather, as I had said before, that maybe a tree fell on the lines, poles came down, etc. But based on the fact that it was intermittent, it sounds very much like it was a voltage problem. Now, whether it was on your side of the meter or their side of the meter, you still should have called them. They could have come out there on an emergency basis because you are an essential public service. They would have put you as a priority. If they come out there normally to replace a transformer, which it sounds like you need to do, they need to upgrade the transformer because it sounds like the load is not providing what you need to have consistent service. They also check for the quality of service based on your equipment. And I still think you need to call them because you're going to continue to have this problem and you are continue to burn out your equipment because you have an undersized, it sounds like you have an undersized transformer and the cables also need to be replaced. But because you haven't called them, we don't know that for a fact. And that really concerns me that it could have been avoided. I truly believe it could have been avoided as far as utilizing the generators and the emissions that resulted.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify one thing, and that is I heard Mr. Karakaburu say that, in fact, they did call Edison, and Edison came out on the 14th, which was actually the day of the power outage. Also, I don't see any evidence in the record of undersized transformers or problems with voltage based on what we have in the record, which is 2017, there was no problem. It was only run approximately 12 hours total. 2018, no problem. Only run something similar, 16, 15, 18 hours total. 2019, since the two interruptions, has not, again, been run. And finally, I would just say, it wasn't the bad weather or the outage that caused the majority of the time of running the generator. It was the fact that even though the power was back up that day, there was a problem with a part. And as we saw, the second outage was, I believe, on the 19th of March. The part was expedited, and they had it by the 22nd of March. That we had heard at the last hearing was normal. Similarly, they ordered it expedited shipping with the first outage, February 14th. It was not their fault that it was shipped somewhere else, and that's what caused the generator to go over the 200 hours because of the need to run this generator because of how close it is to the well. And then finally, I just wanted to point out that also at the last hearing, we heard there that Lake Arrowhead has 56 permits, many other pieces of equipment, many other engines that run many lift stations, and yet there are very few personnel to service them. And so we took that into account as well. So I don't agree, but Mr. Balagopalan, and then, I don't know, Ms. Peralta, if you want to speak again.
No, I agree. We can make the 6 findings. I think you made them. And the main point is a public health issue. If the emergency generator needs to operate when the need arises because of the public health issue of otherwise the sewer will get into the creek and into eventually to the drinking water supply system. And I think subsequent to this hearing, I heard of many situations where the ATS system, the automatic transfer switch, failed, and it happened it was in the news, was at LAX in the early part of June. I think 3 of the terminals lost power. I mean, there was some incident that occurred, I think, to the cable. All the terminals lost power, but 6 of the terminals, the ATS system worked, and they were able to run the generator. However, 3 terminals, parking garages and so forth, it didn't work. They had to manually go and turn that on, and it took a while. It took about 10 hours to finally restore that. So, and then I heard anecdotal from somebody when we had the fire in San Bernardino. Same thing happened in Rancho Cucamonga. They had to break in to turn because the ATS system didn't fail. So it's not unusual for for that system to fail, and the evidence that it's occurred. At least at LAX, subsequent to the hearing, and that was a major one, and that was due to the ATS system failing. So I think the petitioner had made an effort I think he made the right call, and I think we made that determination at the last hearing. Even though the power was back, he decided to keep the engine running, just as because they may not be able to get personnel in time to go there to do the manual switch. It could occur late at night, and then there would have been created a public health issue. So he made the right call. Personally, I believe in letting it continue to run. And then, unfortunately, when they replaced the part, it failed again subsequently. And then I think they made also the right call in getting a new unit, and they're testing it from what we heard. Testimony today, every time they do the maintenance testing to make sure the ATS system switches over and back. So I think it is not unusual for system to fail, and I think in this case, it's a public health issue if we do not allow the standby generator to operate beyond the 200 hours.
Ms. Senator, and then Ms. Budico-Peralta.
I was not impressed at the last hearing with the witness. I think there was negligence. It's been pointed out today, negligence in the best case situation. Credibility is the worst case situation. And I'll repeat as you look at me, credibility is the worst case situation. I voted for it last time because of the service they provide when they're operating. They operate water and wastewater public agency. They serve 21 wastewater lift stations, 24 reservoirs and pump stations, and 2 treatment plants. That's essential. So I had no choice but to operate, even though you're in violation of the rules. No choice but to vote for you. But this is not the first time this has occurred. That's why you have on hand technicians to repair the circuit boards if they should fail. So they're aware of that. They're aware just how they fail. They zap, for the most part, a surge of power. They are aware how they fail. When we had testimony last time, it's my understanding, said to be corrected if I'm wrong, that the part was shipped from Italy.
I just want to be very clear, that's not on the record, and
It was not the record, it's just testimony.
Karakaburu is saying it wasn't the case.
Well, he's saying that today, but it was not my understanding that it was shipped from abroad.
You may be confusing with a different case.
Could very well be, and I'd be glad to be corrected on that situation. But the part that was not, you didn't have that on hand, and it'd be shipped, got delayed, took time to bring it back into place. It seemed to me that since this is not the first time it's happened, it wasn't due to weather that it's happened. It's happened before. But you should have circuit boards on hand as a backup.
I believe that the testimony is that they do have an ATS system on backup now.
Well, for the engineer, and I've been in that position before, you know, if you're going to have a failure rate, it's called failure rate. That means it's failed after a certain time of operation. If you have a failure rate, then it's called preventative maintenance. Before it fails, the engineer knows what I'm talking about. The lawyer may not. But the fact of the matter is that they have to have a backup parts on hand. You do have it sometime, don't you?
Yes, we do.
I'm sorry,
Unfortunately,
the record is closed. Do you have a question you need to ask?
They do.
We can
Well,
open.
I'm communicating with the engineer who understands the point that I'm making, so therefore it doesn't happen again. They will have backup equipment, so it will not be considered something like an oversight. They have a very awesome responsibility in terms of what they do there with the plants, the backup lifts. It's awesome. And so therefore, they should be ready at all time to correct the problem when it occurs. And I had no choice but to vote for them and today because of what they do for the public. But I would just urge the people who are responsible, like the engineer, be Johnny on the spot, that's all.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, and then Dr. Bernstein, did you have?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't agree that their reasoning for utilizing that generator beyond the number of hours, over the 200 hours, because of the fact that he had the option to call the utility and have them come out there on an emergency basis based on the fact that they are an essential public service. They could have very easily, if it was on their side, and we don't know that. There's no documentation, no record that he called, nothing, but the crews could have come out there, restored power. He would have had to have utilized the generator for a much shorter amount of time. And we wouldn't have this situation of going over the limits. And the fact that he still hasn't had them come out there, if he's saying that he had them come out there before, I would have wanted to know what the date was because it doesn't sound like it was done here. And it doesn't sound like it's even been done yet. So I'm very concerned based on the fact that it is an essential public service. And there should have been much more urgency on this. And the utility should have been called and not an assumption made by yourself or somebody on your team.
Okay, Dr. Bernstein, and I just want to again state that we did hear that the utility came out on February 14th, just to clarify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be as succinct as possible. It is my understanding that we're charged with responsibility today of reviewing the evidence that's been presented and determine whether or not we meet the 6 findings so that a regular variance can be imparted. And the chair succinctly and eloquently summarized the events, and I do in fact feel that the 6 findings are there. I also wear another hat in that I sit on the board of the Orange County Sanitation District. So I understand what it is to be tasked with responsibility of a key public health issue and essential public service. And in my opinion, you acted appropriately and as expeditiously as possible. You dealt with every curveball that was thrown to you in the best interest of the constituents that you represent. And it is my opinion that I will, in fact, I do believe, as I've stated, that this case does meet the 6 findings and that a regular variance will be voted upon by myself in a positive fashion. And thank you for your service.
I'm going to make a motion, and mostly, again, I want to say for the record that I appreciate the concerns that have been voiced by Ms. Verdugo-Peralta and by the Senator in terms of issues that can arise, why it might have taken so long. These are definitely issues I had before the original hearing, and I think board members can fall both ways on that. But I would go down to what clinches it for me is that this is an essential public service, and in Health and Safety Code, Section 42352A2, we are directed in making the findings of beyond reasonable control and taking a property that to consider where it's a public agency, whether or not requiring immediate compliance, which would mean not running that generator, would impose an unreasonable burden upon an essential public services, a service. And in this case, given, again, really it's all, I think, summarized for me in that Exhibit 2 and that picture of why it is so dire. And I also just wanted to say from my point of view that I do believe, again, everybody has their own opinion, but I believe Mr. Karakaburu has been a very credible witness, and I thank you for your testimony. My motion will be in the matter of Lake Arrowhead Community Services District versus South Coast Air Quality Management District, case number 6142-1, that we grant the regular variance as is requested based on our discussion of making the 6 findings. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my Exhibit B. Thank you. I further move that we adopt the proposed findings and decision in Exhibit B. However, we will have to make the necessary changes to reflect both that it was not heard on consent, it was that the parties were in fact present, and any additional facts that we did receive today, which I will work with the clerk to make sure to incorporate into the proposed findings accurately based on the hearing today. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Bernstein seconds that motion. Is there a discussion by Ms. Verdugo-Peralta has some discussion on it?
The only other thing that I didn't really go into was the fact that, and I understand your motion and why you're making your motion, but I also think it was incumbent upon the inspector to verify whether there was an outage, what the cause was, which is not hard to do. All you have to do is call the utility, and they will give you that information because it's on record. So there's nothing in this document or any of the documents that states that AQMD inspector did that. That also is a concern for me. So I will be voting no.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Senator votes?
I'm going to vote aye this time, and for the same reason I did last time. It is the essential service. The people in that neighborhood should not be held accountable if there's a management problem. Clearly, in my view, the situation was mismanaged. And it could have been, some of those hours could have been saved, as already been pointed out. So I vote aye.
Thank you, and I should stop because I just want to add to my motion, I did not write what the excess emissions are. The excess emissions are the same as they were for the short variance in pounds per hour of CO NOx, VOC, PM10, and SOx, and only when the generator is run, either for emergency purposes or for maintenance. And do you accept that as part of, as the second, Dr. Bernstein? Dr. Bernstein indicates yes. And your vote is still yes, Senator?
I have no choice.
Okay, we appreciate that. Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, your vote is?
Unfortunately, my vote is no based on the statements that I've made previously. I recognize the fact that it's an essential public service and there needed to be a continuous service, but I think it could have been avoided as far as the number of hours on the generator. So my vote is no.
Fair enough. Mr. Balagopalan, your vote?
Yes.
Dr. Bernstein, you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-1. And thank you very much, both parties, for coming in today and answering all of those questions that were still unanswered. And good luck for the rest of the year, and hopefully we won't see you again next year.
Thank you.
Although we liked you very much. Okay, are the other, do we know, we should probably take a break. Is the other,
Yes.
Oh, you're also handling that too, Ms. Barrera, is that correct? Okay. Why don't we, let's take a break, and that'll give us all time to shift around our papers. So we'll go off the record until about 25 after. We are off the record. We have that weird view again. There we go. We're back on the record. I'm going to call the second matter for the day, and that is South Coast AQMD versus Providence Tarzana Medical Center, case number 6128-1, and this is for a modification for order for abatement. And since the modification is requested by Providence Tarzana, I'm going to ask first who is representing Providence Tarzana today.
John Hines, Latham and Watkins on behalf of Providence Tarzana Medical Center.
I'm sorry, was that Mr. Hines?
Yes.
You said it fast, I'm sorry. And who's representing the executive officer today?
Good morning. It's Teresa Barrera, and I wanted to introduce one of our summer interns for the General Counsel's office. It's Jacqueline Dean. She has completed her first year at Southwestern Law School, and she'll be handling the hearing today, doing the opening and the examination and the closing of witnesses, but I may jump in a couple times here and there. But we're both of us on behalf of the executive officer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barrera. And
What year?
Pardon?
What year law school?
I just completed my first year of law school.
congratulations, it's
I
the
have one
hardest.
question I could ask you.
And can you, can you state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, it's Jacqueline Dean, Jacqueline, Dean, Dean.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. We look forward to the hearing.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I ask you a question?
yes.
Like that, yeah. They have a water fountain right there in the closed-off area at the school. Above the water fountain is a plaque. Did you see it?
I have not yet.
Take a look, it's me.
Is it? I'll take a look at that.
All good to know. Before we begin with openings, I'm going to first, we have two new members who were not present at either the original hearing or the last modification hearing, I believe. So I'm going to ask first Ms. Verdugo Peralta if you have reviewed the record and are prepared to hear the case today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I have reviewed the record and all of the documents that went along with it, and I am prepared to go forward.
Great. And Dr. Bernstein?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you have prepared.
I have, in fact.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move forward, and let me mark, we received first a proposed findings and decision for modification of the stipulated order for abatement, and we will mark that as exhibit number 3. Oh, it did? Okay, sorry. We will mark that as exhibit B as in boy. Okay. And then we also received on letterhead Providence St. Joseph Health Real Estate Strategy and Operations letter. That also? That came from the district. That's what I thought. Okay. That we will mark as exhibit number 3 for the district. Okay, so once again, the proposed findings will be B as in boy, and the letter on letterhead, 2 pages, will be exhibit number 3. And then I'm going to ask anyone who wishes to testify or may testify in today's hearing, including any members of the public, to please rise to be sworn in at this time. Oh, from the first hearing? Okay. Okay, so just indicate that he's still under oath. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Mr. Hines, you may begin your opening.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Chair, members of the board. Again, John Hines, Latham and Watkins on behalf of Providence Tarzana Medical Center. Providence Tarzana is here today to request a modification to a stipulated order for abatement that was heard last December 2018. As we have some new board members here today, and to help us all, I'm going to provide a little bit of additional background on how we got here and then what we're going to be asking for today. So Providence Tarzana is a nonprofit medical center serving the San Fernando Valley. Right now, Providence Tarzana is in the process of undergoing a comprehensive campus renovation. They are also in the process of retrofitting a number of their existing buildings to comply with seismic requirements. Last December, we were before the hearing board on a stipulated order for abatement concerning an emergency generator. As we talked about last time, emergency generators are used by hospitals and medical centers to provide backup power for critical care functions. In this case, we refer to the generator at issue as Generator 5. Generator 5 is a generator that provides backup power for the operating rooms and the emergency room at the medical center. Providence Tarzana installed this generator in January 2014. And when it was installed, it had a portable equipment registration permit from the California Air Resources Board, or a PERT permit. That is generally, as we talked about last time, that generally is good for a year. Following an inspection in 2015 and a follow-up inspection in 2016 by the district, Providence Tarzana submitted an application for Generator 5, which the district ultimately denied in 2018 after determining that the generator that was installed could not meet the requirements of Rule 1470 for emergency generators at sensitive resources, in this case a hospital. So then we ended up coming before this hearing board requesting a stipulated order for abatement. And some of what we described at that last hearing, what was put forward in the record, was that as part of the overall campus renovation, Providence Tarzana was going to be replacing a number of emergency generators with 2 new generators. Once they learned that the Generator 5 could not be permitted, they expedited the process of bringing one of the new generators online. This is what we call Generator 1 and what we'll be talking about today. And the hearing board issued the stipulated order for abatement, and that had a number of conditions associated with it. One of those conditions was to turn off the existing Generator 5 by August 1st, 2019. There were also a number of interim conditions, one of which was to set the generator and receive OSHPD inspection by April 1st, 2019. So in March, Providence Tarzana applied for a petition to modify that interim deadline. So there was a request filed with the hearing board to allow Providence Tarzana until May 1st to set the generator itself. And the reason for that request was this winter is very wet and there was 23 construction days lost. At the time, there was no request to extend this August 1st date because at that time it was fully expected that we would be able to meet the August 1st deadline. So why are we here today? In May, Providence Tarzana received notice from the fire department that plans that had been previously approved in April, and you'll hear testimony to all of this today, plans that had previously been approved in April, the fire department requested changes to those plans. The changes that were requested would have required significant changes to the overall design, including installed features of the generator project. And the reason for that was based on fuel pipe sizing, and then you'll hear about a containment curb. So after working with the fire department for several weeks, the fire department ended up approving revised plans that were substantially similar to the plans that had been previously approved. But during that period of time, Providence lost another several weeks of construction. So that's why we're here today. So between the 23 days lost from the rain and the delays caused by this back and forth with the fire department, Providence Tarzana needs extra time. You're going to hear testimony today that it has invested significant resources, hundreds of thousands of dollars, trying to expedite this. And you will hear that they have had to move resources from the broader project. There has been a significant focus on this, overtime, weekend work, et cetera. There has been a significant effort to try to get there, and they are close. There was hope that we might have been able to take this off calendar. We're not there. However, you'll hear today that the entirety of the physical infrastructure associated with the generator, fuel tanks, and the like is all installed. What we have left are a few additional inspections. There's a fire department inspection of an alarm system. There is a final inspection from the fire department and a second inspection from the fire department. And then there will be inspections from OSHPD. And you'll hear testimony to all of that today. So again, we are here today requesting a petition for modification. We think there is good cause given the efforts that have been taken over the last several months dealing with some significant setbacks, and also just generally a project of this nature and complexity. And we have some pictures here today that will help walk through, really what has gone in. It's not as simple as, throwing in a new generator. You'll hear about that as well. We'd also like to thank the district for working with us throughout this process. They've been dealing with me a lot over the last, and we certainly appreciate that, and the medical center appreciates that as well. We have Van Zhuang today as a witness who will be able to testify to what I spoke about in this opening statement. He's a consultant to the medical center. He's helping manage the broader renovation project, and more specifically, he's helping get this generator switched over from, again, what we call Generator 5 to the new generator. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Ms. Dean, your opening.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. We are here today to discuss Providence Tarzana Medical Center's petition to extend the stipulated order for abatement's final compliance date by 40 days from August 1st, 2019 to September 10th, 2019. The current order is in place until the facility, Providence Tarzana Medical Center, comes into compliance with District Rules 203A and 1470C2C Roman numeral 4, Roman numeral 1, on or before August 1st, 2019. Under the order's conditions, the facility is currently operating emergency generator number 5, the generator in violation of the aforementioned rules, in the interim until the new district-compliant generator is operational or the final compliance date occurs, whichever comes first. The district recognizes that the facility is a nonprofit medical center serving the emergency health services needs of the community, and that shutting down the violating generator would shut down the backup power source for the center's critical care functions. You will hear evidence today that the facility is willing to further mitigate excess emissions by further reducing the order's annual operating and weekly testing conditions during these next 40 days. The district would also like to note that aside from the prior modified order for abatement, which the facility handled in a timely manner, the facility has remained in compliance with the order's conditions since it has been in place. On July 19th, 2019, the district inspected the facility and found no issues in accordance with the order's conditions. Unfortunately, our inspector is out sick today and will not be available to testify. Although the district does not anticipate opposing this request for an extension, we will reserve taking a position until the conclusion of the evidence. The district would like to better understand the reasons for the delays, since the facility is in fact requesting 40 days extended in addition to its 2-month cushion that was built into the original stipulated order. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines, your first witness.
Great, thank you. Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Van Duong, V as in Victor, A-N, Duong, D as in David, U-O-N-G.
And what is your current role at Providence Tarzana?
I am a consultant who's responsible for overseeing the campus-wide renovations of the hospital, including construction of new facilities, seismic retrofits, and also the installation of the generator 1 in question and the abatement of generator number 5.
And how long have you served in this role?
I've been a consultant with Providence Tarzana, serving this role since for 3.5 years now.
And in your role, are you also responsible for OSHPD and other regulatory compliance?
Yes, I am. My role entails interfacing with OSHPD and making certain that my team also interfaces with them. We have also communications and interface as required with jurisdictions such as Los Angeles Fire Department, City of Los Angeles, and the South Coast Air Quality Management District.
And can you provide the board with a little reminder on what OSHPD is and what their role is here?
OSHPD is a state agency, and they have jurisdiction over all hospital construction. OSHPD is responsible, for the plan check department to review and approve, all design documents. Once those design documents are approved, the contractor can install per those design documents. In the field, OSHPD has 3 field officers. One is the district structural engineer, who is responsible for confirming that structural elements are installed in accordance with the approved drawings. We have the fire life safety officer, who is responsible for confirming that any fire life safety elements are installed in conformance with the documents. And then we have the area compliance officer, who is basically the oversees all those 2 other inspectors. He's responsible for all other elements not already covered, and he has the final say. In addition to that, there are on-site, we have a team of on-site inspectors of records, and they are licensed by OSHPD. They are the eyes and ears of OSHPD on a day-to-day basis. The field inspectors, the district structural engineer, the area compliance officer, and the fire life safety officer, they are not on site full-time. They are on either a weekly or a bi-weekly basis.
Okay, and for each of those, district structural engineer, fire life safety officer, and area compliance officer, can you give a little bit idea of what each of their roles are with respect to the generator at issue, their requirements for that piece?
Yes, if I may, I'd like to describe the generator project, and that would give some context into the roles and responsibilities of the OSHPD officials. The generator requires, of course, the generator and electrical gear and the fuel oil tank. But in addition to that, there's infrastructure that needs to be installed, and I'll just rattle off a few here. There's underground electrical and plumbing lines, fuel oil lines in particular, that need to be installed. There's encasements, there's trenching, there's equipment in the existing hospital that needs to be upgraded to accept the new generator and the new services. Fuel oil tank includes an alarm system that is built and manufactured by different vendors, and these come on site and need to be fabricated and pieced together on site. Unlike the generator that comes in as a black box ready to start, the fuel oil system is not that way. The district structural engineer is responsible for making certain that any type of below grade steel reinforcement and encasement is approved before we cover, and they are also responsible for making certain.
Yeah, can I pause you on there? So the OSHPD district structural engineer is responsible for?
He's responsible for inspecting all structural elements associated with that infrastructure.
Okay, and then you can go on, what would those structural pieces?
Those structural pieces would be steel reinforcement for duct bank encasements underground, including, and they also would include installation of the rebar reinforcement for above grade pads and slabs on grade, and also it includes anchorage and torquing of all electrical equipment, tanks, any major equipment as such as generators as well.
Okay, and then what are the responsibilities of the fire life safety officer?
The fire life safety officer doesn't inspect the conduit, but what he does inspect is the cables being run. He inspects to make certain that the cables are properly torqued, making certain that all the alarm and low voltage wirings run, that the large conductors are properly Megger tested. In other words, they were installed without any damage to the cable. The Megger testing measures the resistance in the cables. He's also responsible for any type of alarming system at the local generator and tank, and the alarms that report back to 24-hour monitoring stations, which in our case is a PBX room.
Okay, and then what is the responsibility of the area compliance officer?
The area compliance officer oversees to ensure that the district structural engineer and the fire life safety officers have signed off, verified, and approved those elements, and any other items that weren't approved by those officers, the area compliance officer would look at and sign off. These include clearances, verified compliance reports, and just overall functionality of the systems that we're installing.
Okay, and then other than the 3 OSHPD on-the-ground inspectors that you described, what other approvals are necessary before you can turn on the new generator?
We need fire department approval. That process involves, multiple steps. The recent steps are we need him or her to review the fuel tank, the above-ground storage tank alarming, that they alarm locally and also report back to the PBX station and the associated alarms on the generator.
I'd like to take a step back. You testified before this hearing board back in December, and then you submitted a declaration with the petition for modification that was submitted in March. In your declaration, you talked about the rain delays. Could you give a little bit of background on what happened between December and March with the project?
Between December and March, we were laying out underground trenches. We were relocating existing utilities that serve the hospital. We were getting those out of the footprint of our new pathway for the new generator infrastructure. We installed caissons that support the new generator tank and also the new, the fuel oil tank and the generator. Those caissons are 20 to 30 feet into the ground. We also laid out and installed high voltage duct banks and conduits under the line, had those in case. That comes in 3 different layers of entrenchment. First layer is high voltage. Second layer is lower voltage plus medical gas, and third layer is the low voltage and storm drain and runoff.
Okay, and can you explain the impact of the rain on those pieces of the project?
Yes, the challenge with having our rain is due to our soil conditions based on the geological surveys that we performed. Our soil absorbed a lot of water, and as such, we could not trench for our conduit encasements. And where we had some trenching going on, the grounds were so saturated, we had to give time for the soils to dry out and mitigate. Just another remark here. In order for us to have any type of utilities placed in the ground, we need a soils inspector to sign off that the ground is acceptable to accept concrete placement on or duct bank encasements. And because of that, the first 3 months of construction were primarily underground utilities, and the 23 rain delays delayed significantly those activities.
And then there was a request to move an interim compliance deadline from April 1st to May 1st. Did Providence achieve that interim deadline?
Yes, we achieved that deadline on April 30th. That's when we set the generator and this enclosure as well.
Okay, and we have a picture of that. Could you just talk through that picture to give the hearing board a little bit of background of what was taking place on the 30th?
You won't be able to be picked up on the microphone.
If you could just talk through it.
Sure. So what we see is a crane setting the enclosure. This is the acoustical enclosure over the generator. The generator is yellow. It's on the pad. And what you'll notice is that the pad is pretty much exactly the perimeter sizing of the generator enclosure. So in other words, what you see is conduits coming up literally from the dirt around that pad. So we were able to expedite construction of this pad out of sequence in order to meet the compliance date. In the next photo, what you'll see is the conduits around that pad will then become encased with slab-on-grade concrete.
I'm sorry, and by the next photo, did you mean the next photo in the petition?
It is, yeah.
And that is on page 7 that you just referred to of the petition?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Why at the time, with the request for the extension of the interim deadline, why didn't you ask for an extension of the final compliance deadline?
At the time, we felt we had still plenty of flow in our schedule to meet the final completion date. We had rain delays, they were significant, but as I testified in our first hearing, we built in float for normal delays that we would anticipate during construction.
And then what happened?
So after our hearing, or after the petition was granted in March, we got approval from fire department on our final design. That was on April 4th. We went back in May for some follow-up items that were not related to the original design. And during that first week of May, we were informed by the fire department that they wanted us to change the containment curb around the above-ground storage tank and upsize the fuel oil pipes.
And what were the implications of changing the containment curb and upsizing the fuel oil pipes?
I'm going to refer us back to that picture. So what we see there is our conduits that come up off the ground. We had this similar situation on the north side of that generator, and if we were to upsize the containment curb, it would be in effect encompasses the entire footprint of all those conduits. In other words, what that meant was that we would have to tear apart anything that we installed underground, pads, electrical conduit, and redo that work at a significant time impact. Probably 2 to 3 months a delay is what we would have realized.
So what did you do once you received this notice from the fire department related to the containment curb and the fuel oil pipe sizing?
We received the notice verbally from the fire department when we went for over-the-counter plan check, which is a common process for us with fire department. And when they first informed us about this, we felt we informed the fire inspector that we would go back and pull up the appropriate code references and present him with our engineering design to demonstrate that our design was in fact adequate for the fuel storage tank. And so we did that over the course of 2 weeks. By the end of the second week, we realized that we weren't getting very much progress from the plan checker. That's when we escalated that to his superior. And that went through a 2-week process before, we realized, as we began to realize that we needed to escalate that even above his supervisor. I should say that the original approval that we got in April, the plan checker who notified us of the required changes was a different plan checker from April, and the inspector who ultimately reapproved the original design is a more senior inspector with the department. He's the one who allowed us on the first week of May to proceed.
Did construction continue during that period of time of back and forth with the fire department?
Most of the construction had halted because in order for us, if we were to have proceeded with construction and if the fire department basically held their ground and required those changes, we would have had to spend 2 to 3 months redoing the entire infrastructure underground at the tank and leading up to the tank.
And when did the fire department ultimately provide approval?
The approval was provided on June 7th. We had indication a few days prior to that we would have an outcome that was favorable to the project, and based on that initial indication, but prior to the formal approval, we felt comfortable in taking a risk and proceeding with some of our construction activities.
Okay. And then did you take any activities or take any actions in order to expedite construction further at that time?
Yes, at that time, I would actually like to point out the next photo, if you will. John, if you just hold that there for a second before I flip over. John, hold that photo up real quickly because I need to point something out. Right to the right of the pickup truck, you'll see conduits that come up out of the ground. Right, there's no concrete encasing those conduits. Let's go to the next drawing. You'll see the fence posts where those conduits once were. Those conduits actually have been cut down a lot lower. They're there, but from this angle, it's tough to make out. So we actually extended the curb out in that area. On the north side, you see the white above-ground storage tank. We also poured the concrete out there, and that took us a week to do. The CMU, the concrete masonry unit wall that divides the tank and the generator, that was installed also within that first week.
Was there any other activities, whether it be overtime or any work that was done in order to kind of effectuate all that work that you just described?
Yes, as soon as we felt comfortable, and I should say that we proceeded at risk to hit the date, but some of the activities that some of the efforts that we took were having crews anywhere from 4 to 10 men work overtime between 2 to 4 extra hours each day on during the weekdays, and we also had full crews working on weekends, and we did that pretty much nonstop until today.
And as of today, is there any work left to be done on the construction of this generator and installation of the generator?
All physical installations are complete. The only items we have left is really at this point testing and inspections with the various authorities having jurisdiction. I will say just on my last comment here that the expedited overtime plus weekend work included not just the crews, but we have the construction general contractor who's required to be there and supervise the work. We also had inspectors on standby, on site during that entire process to make sure that they're seeing the efforts going in and catching any issues before they arise. And we had the design team that we've pulled resources. As a matter of fact, we pulled resources from the inspector of record, the contractor, the subcontractor, and the design team. We pulled them off of other critical elements of the hospital construction to focus on meeting the order for abatement.
And do you have a sense of the cost of that additional work that you just described?
We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I anticipate getting a $500,000 request from the various parties, subcontractors, general contractor, the inspector of record team, and also the design team.
So we're July 31st today. What is left to do if the physical work, you mentioned inspections. Can you walk through what inspections are left before this new generator can come online?
Sure. Sequentially, what we need next is for the fire department and the fire life safety officer with OSHPD to review our alarming system at the fuel oil tank and approve that. With that approval, we will be able to fill the storage tank and like filling gas in your car, that allows us to have fuel to start up the generator and do the generator testing.
And is that inspection currently scheduled?
The inspection is scheduled for this coming Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. It's been confirmed.
And is there anything that could cause that schedule to be delayed?
The items that are out of our control include mainly making certain that the fire department show up. We haven't had problems with the fire department. They've actually been pretty accommodating. They are short-staffed. That is their challenge. They are very short-staffed. With the fire life safety officer, they are very short-staffed. We have the inspector who has regularly scheduled visits once every other week. Next Thursday is his next regularly scheduled visit. We are requesting that he come out earlier to help us expedite the installation, but that is out of our control. And in addition to that, once that sign-off has occurred, we have to go through an inspection, a final inspection of the generator system itself, how it cuts over, and the ability for the generator to turn on within a 10-second time frame. Once that's approved, then we have to get our verified compliance reports, which are OSHPD documents, get them together and have the area compliance officer. Remember, he's the overseer of all the inspections. He has final say. Also, I'd like to note that we've had a good relationship with the OSHPD inspectors and also fire department. We don't have an issue with them. It is more of a function of their availability just being short-staffed.
And during this period of time, before these final inspections, is there work being done or testing being done by Providence or the contractor itself on this?
Yes, we continue to test and shake out our systems as much as we can without the ability to, of course, start up the generator.
Can activities that take place during the startup and shakedown, could that affect your ability to receive the inspections? Or is there anything, if you all discover something during your inspection, that could delay these inspections further?
Yes, so we have all the installation complete. The next steps really is the test inspection internally first to make certain that, alarm back at the monitoring station or the alarm locally. For instance, we checked yesterday and this morning locally we don't have an issue, but we ran into an issue with the alarm system going back to the monitoring station.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dean, do you have any questions for the witness?
May we have a few minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, we're back on the record. Ms. Dean, your question.
Hi. Thank you for being here, Mr. Duong. So with the fire department, can you please walk us through the process for the original permitting?
Yes, our process that we took on this project was in February, on February 25th, we met with one of the senior senior plan checkers, I should say, with fire department, which is a common practice for any type of inspection with the fire department. We went in, we presented with him with some preliminary drawings on what we plan to do. These drawings are very similar to other hospital generators that we've installed, nothing new to fire department as well. Those drawings do talk about, or do show routing, they show the generator itself. By the way, I would say that the fire department views the generator more as a black box. They care more about clearances around the generator, but with a fuel oil tank, because they are parts and pieces built by different vendors and manufacturers, they need to be compiled and installed in the field. They're more focused on that. They're more focused on spill containment and alarming of the fuel oil system. So we started that process on May 25th. We got very good feedback, very collaborative with them. Went back in on March, and March 12th. From March 12th through April 4th, we went through a series of over-the-counter reviews with the fire department, addressing their concerns. Nothing out of the ordinary. A very positive experience, and received approval on April 4th.
Okay, thank you. And is it correct, back on December 18th in the hearing, you mentioned that you submitted for a plan check submittal with LA Fire Department earlier that month?
We did, as a matter of fact. That happened, I'm going off of memory, but that happened either in October or November of last year, and they did take a look at our generator drawing, and they gave us sign-off.
And was that inclusive with the fuel oil storage tank?
Not at that point. At that time, the discussion was to develop that further, and that's when we met with them in February.
Okay. And is it fair to say that the additional time was for the design and engineers to work on that?
Yes, it was.
All right. And the approval on April 4th, was that a permit or was it a stamped set of plans?
It's a stamped set of plans which allows us to continue with the construction. And usually for fire department, their stamp is, I would say, unique, not special, but unique from other departments, where the plan checker, even though he approves, it'll say on there, subject to fire inspection, review and approval in the field, something along those lines.
Okay. And was the generator and the fuel oil storage tank, the conduits, were they built per plan
They were, yes, they were built per plan, yes.
prior to April 4th?
Yes.
Okay. Or April 30th, excuse me.
Yes. Mhm.
All right. So when you went into LA Fire Department for a separate matter, as you
Yes.
previously stated, a new plan checker
Correct. Mhm.
decided to make those changes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So are you familiar with the monthly reports?
Yes, I
that
am.
was requested under the
Yes,
December order? Okay, great. And did you prepare these reports?
I did.
Okay. So I have provided you with everyone with the copy of the June 10th report, and it's marked as exhibit number 3. Mr. Duong, can you please read paragraph number 4?
The one starting with there's no float.
Yes, correct.
And there's no float, in parentheses, buffer remaining in the schedule, and all efforts and inspections, including those outside of PTMC's control, will need to be flawless to meet the date. PTMC continues to be diligent in its efforts to comply with the order for abatement, and we will continue to keep the district apprised of our progress.
And what is the date of this report?
It is dated June 10th.
Okay. And what date was the petition submitted?
The petition was submitted July 9th.
Okay. Could you please, if you were able to make this assessment back on June 10th, could you please provide more understanding on why the 1-month delay for the petition?
At the time when I put this assessment or this report together, I felt that we were out of float, but I felt we still had a really good shot of making the dates, especially in light of us continuing at that time we continued our efforts to pull resources from other areas of construction. We pulled the subcontractor, the contractor, the inspector of record team, and also the design team. We pulled them off to focus on this, and we felt we had a really good chance. And that was also in concert with my meeting with that team to make sure that they felt comfortable as well.
Thank you. And then just earlier you testified that the 23 rain delay was due to the underground utility activity?
It occurred during the underground utility activities, yes.
Okay, so did that impact, were you guys planning to actually anticipate the cables to be pulled and torqued?
Not at that time. During those months, it'd be running conduits, actually trenching, that's the main activity, right? Trenching, installing rebar cages for the conduit and encasement, and that had to happen in 3 separate lifts. So you have the deepest level of trenching, you ran the conduits and encasement, then you backfilled, then you ran the next level of trenching, did the same thing, then you ran the 3rd level of trenching. So there's 3 different levels, and so because of the multiple systems that complicate our installation, it wasn't a straight shot.
Okay, So with the rain delay of 23 days, that just impacted the trenching and the encasement. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that affected, of course, our ability to set the generator early, or generator on time for the original order for abatement. Yeah, that pushed everything out. The generator not being set is because we couldn't pour concrete because of the soil conditions.
And so the fire approval, approval on April 4th, with the fact that you've mentioned the fire inspects the cables being run, and that is integral with these underground conduits, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
I will note that the fire department doesn't approve conduit routing underground, but having the design of the fuel oil tank and the generator clearances affects how the conduit is run. So they don't approve it, but their approval affects the routing.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Mr. Balagopalan?
Mr. Dong, so when you went back in May to the fire department, is that when they were concerned about the previous approval?
Yes, it was a different plan checker, and he brought up what he thought was an issue.
And what were they?
The plan checker wanted us to upsize the fuel oil pipe by a half-inch size from 2 inches to 2.5 inches, and he wanted us to significantly increase the containment design around the fuel oil tank.
Is that in the codes, fire department codes?
Not per what we eventually demonstrated to the senior most official there, but that was what the plan checker was claiming.
So then you met, after going back and forth, then you met with the supervisor, and you said you had a outcome. What was the favorable outcome? What was finally decided you had to do?
Yeah, the outcome was that we stayed with our original design on the containment curb, and we stayed with the original fuel oil pipe sizing.
So what about the wall? Was that in the original design?
Are you referring to
The CMU, the
CMU?
concrete?
That was already part of the design. That wasn't affected.
And all the ball lights around there,
That's correct.
that's all in there?
That's
So
correct.
then, so the delay didn't result in any changes on the design or changes you had to make? By going back and forth, you went back to the original design?
We went back to the original design in terms of the fuel oil pipe, and the containment curb. There's other clarifications we made, but those didn't significantly impact the design.
See. You mentioned you have a test bank,
Yes, we have a fuel oil alarm panel.
alarm panel, and that's for indicating high or low.
Exactly, yes.
And you said it goes offsite or it goes to the PBX?
It goes, well, there's alarming that happens locally, and that is a code-driven feature. And there's also alarming that has to go back to the PBX for 24-hour monitoring.
And that's in the facility?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, what about the test, for the generator? Do you have a test power bank for the testing the generator?
You're talking about like a
The
load bank? Yes,
Load
we
bank,
do.
yeah.
Yes, we do.
So that, in that drawing, is it there or in?
No, it's not in that drawing. It's actually in the, so that's after July 9th, we installed the load banks.
And they're permanent, they're not a temporary?
They're permanent, they're not needed for the order for abatement, they're needed for future testing.
Right, so when you do the testing, you'll be doing the load bank testing. I mean, you have to do load bank testing to get final bio for mosh pad, right?
Correct. We actually have the load bank that is now, the permanent load bank that is now currently installed, but we also have backup load banks for testing for the order for abatement.
So does the load bank only serve this generator or multiple units?
It would serve multiple units.
Now, does it also test when, we heard earlier in another case, the automatic, the switch, the transfer switch? Does it test for that? I mean, when the load bank is part of that testing, does it see the generator responds within starts out within 10 seconds?
Yes, that's part of the eventual fire life safety officer and the fire department check. They make their check to make sure that there's a transfer when we lose normal power, and that transfer should happen within 10 seconds.
And that's part of the load bank testing, is it, or
The
separate?
the load bank testing is separate, but we would schedule that on the same day to get, to basically accomplish multiple tasks on one visit.
Now, when you do your monthly maintenance testing on the engine and the generator, what all is involved in that? Do you do you don't do load bank testing is done not every month, right?
No, what we do is, so NFPA 110, and I'm going to talk briefly because I'm not an expert in NFPA 110, but it requires a monthly testing, and you have to run the generator to a certain percentage capacity. If you can meet it with the existing hospital, then you don't need load banks, but if you can't, then you need the load banks in order to ramp the generator up.
Oh, so it's on a case by case whether
Correct.
you need to run that.
There's several different criteria that the NFPA presents. You can do one or two or three different methods to meet the 30-minute monthly testing requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Can you go back to May, and you were with the original, no, not the original, the new plan checker. You said it took 2 weeks before you escalated to the supervisor, is that correct?
That's correct. So the first week of May, when we were informed by the plan checker, we had our design consultant there. I wasn't there personally, but it's not uncommon for the process to involve, hey, we think you need to update something, and the designer to come back and say, well, let me go pull the codes because I think we're okay. So that process took 2 weeks before we realized that. Sorry.
Thank you, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but my question is, once you escalated it, how much longer did it take?
We escalated after 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks later is when we had a meeting with one of the senior most inspectors. I will say, to answer your question directly, after the 2 weeks, we were able 2 weeks later to get a meeting set. So by the time we set the meeting, it was 4 weeks, and by the time we had the meeting, it was 5 weeks.
Okay, so it is about 5 weeks delay based on
Yes.
that? Okay. The next set of questions I really wanted to understand, because it's hard for me, because there's a lot of approvals. I know that's probably your life, and inspections. But you had on page 7 and 8 of the petition, starting at the very bottom of 7, you have all these bullet points with anticipated dates for various approvals. Can you just go through those and tell us which ones occurred and which ones still remain?
So at the bottom of page 7, I'll start with line 20, we'll call it 22 at this point, and I'll go down from bullet to bullet. So that first bullet is Oshpod's district structure engineer, sign off of all seismic and anchorage infrastructure. Inspection is anticipated to take place July 10th. It did, and we had approval. Next bullet point, Oshpod's plan check department, approval of plans to allow PTMC to make corrections to certain existing electrical infrastructure. PTMC submitted revised plans for approval on June 24th. We did. Oshpod's fire life safety officer, approval of fire alarm shop drawings and revised fuel oil system drawings. PTMC has been installing the fuel oil system at risk. The field review of drawings is anticipated to take place on July 11th. That did happen. Oshpod's area compliance officer, ACO, approval of the revised fuel oil system drawings. Again, PTMC has been installing the fuel oil system at risk. The field review of the drawings is anticipated July 15th. We reviewed that with the ACO, and he determined that he did not need to approve those drawings, only the fire life safety officer. Next bullet, fire department and ACO approval of fuel oil pipe pressure test. The test is anticipated to take place on July 15th. That happened, and we got approval. Oh, actually, I should probably clarify. The test is set to take place on July 15th. We actually got approval on the 17th and the 22nd. 17th was fire department, 22nd was the ACO. That was a function of having them, being able to get them on site. That didn't affect our construction process because we proceeded. Fire department and FLSO inspection, testing, and approval of leak detection, high and low level alarms for the AST. The inspections and testing are anticipated to take place on July 24th and 25th. That didn't take place.
Did not. Yeah, you did skip ACO approval of merger tests.
Yeah,
and-
the ACO approval of MEGR tests and electrical
sorry,
distribution board terminations. The tests and terminations are anticipated to take place on July 22nd. That happened. And then the next bullet, we didn't meet that date.
So is that one of the ones that you are stating, or you stated will take place on next Tuesday?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, you may proceed, go ahead.
Fire life safety officer approval of the fire alarm system. The inspection is anticipated to take place on July 25th. Let me double check something here. We didn't get approval. We had a pre-inspection that day from the fire life safety officer because we weren't ready for that system.
Did you have a follow-up on that?
Yeah,
one?
just, do you have to, does fire department have to approve it before you can fill up the tank?
Yes, we do.
So that is only, so after August, whenever you get that approval, then you can do the filling of the fuel tank and then do the alarm testing?
We have a fire life safety supplemental officers, not the main officer, coming tomorrow to review that system with us.
But you cannot fill the fuel tank until the fire department approves it, or,
That's correct.
and then test the alarms subsequently after it's filled, or?
The alarms are tested as they're being filled
As they're
at the
being
fuel
filled.
tank, yes.
Okay.
That allows us to go ahead and start the generator.
So that will occur Tuesday, or next Tuesday, or after that? Do you have an anticipated date for that?
So
bullet?
for the fire alarm itself, not to be confused with the fuel oil alarm, the fire alarm, we have the fire life safety officer, supplemental officer coming out tomorrow. The fire alarm inspection is scheduled for next Tuesday, or this coming Tuesday at 8:30.
Okay, and that is, just for the record, that's August 6th, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a final bullet.
Yes, fire life safety officer and an ACO approval of factory startups, load bank tests, and all verified compliance reports. Note that PTMC will be attempting to schedule special visits from FLSO and ACO sometime between July 26th and August 1st in order to meet the stipulated order's final compliance deadline. But these visits would be outside the FLSO and ACO standard inspection schedules, and there is no guarantee such meetings can be secured. If FLSO and ACO are not able to accommodate the special visit requests, the approval of factory startups, load bank tests, and all verified compliance reports could be delayed for several weeks. I think that's more of a comment, but we have a job walk. That's the job walk. We have an inspection set up for Tuesday, as we talked about, and then next Thursday is the regularly scheduled visit for the fire life safety officer.
Okay, so you're anticipating that between next Tuesday to next Thursday, these final 3 bullets, and thus the final testing would be completed?
We're pushing for these dates. Once we have an approval to fill the fuel oil tank, we generally need roughly a week to go through a shakeout of the generator system. At this point, if we anticipate getting approval next Tuesday, we'd in essence be compressing our shakeout testing, and we're still aiming for next Thursday, which is the 8th, to get the fire department and the fire life safety officer to sign off on our generator.
Okay, and then, is there other additional testing that you need to do, either internally or otherwise, before it can be up and running?
Well, so once we get the approval to fill the tank Tuesday, we will do our internal testing, do the shakeout of the generator in anticipation of the inspection on the 8th, Thursday the 8th, with the fire life safety officer and the fire department. And once we get the approval on that date, then we would need to get final approval from the ACO, which his next regularly scheduled visit is Monday the 12th.
Monday, the 12th of August, okay. So in a perfect world, if all went well, it is possible that you could have final compliance by August 12th, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the reason why you're looking for September 10th, is that having to do with confidence in that date and?
The primary reason for that is, if during our inspections, the fire life safety officer or the fire department find any type of corrections that we need to make, we do have to call them out again after we make the inspections. In addition, we don't have the availability for extra visits from the fire life safety officer or the fire department. Those come on a case by case, and we make them literally as we are ready to call them out.
Yes, Mr. Balagopalan, you have a question?
Yeah, and in the last bullet item, it's, it's mentioned factory startup. Now, you mentioned earlier too, you see it as the fire department sees it as a black box. You anticipate any issues with the factory startup and load bank testing? Is there potential for some, delays due to that?
There's always the potential for delays with the factory startup. In my experience with the generators that I've started up over the years, those are less of a risk item for us. The items that are more risk, I wouldn't say risk, that we need to pay attention to are really how the generator alarm system and the controls communicate to the fuel oil tank controls, because they're two different vendors and two different systems.
So do you anticipate delays in there, or is there potential for some? And the reason I'm asking is, we don't want you to have come back to the board again in September because of some, do you want to build in a little bit more time, but come into compliance with running the generator sooner, but just in case there's some issues that develop.
Can you give me 1 second, please? Sir, so I think, I think you're asking, do I foresee any risk with the August 12th date?
The September.
The September 10th date. I feel comfortable that we're going to be able to meet that date. There are risks as we are going through testing that we'll run into issues that we have to continue to work through. My bigger concerns are just being able to get the fire life safety officer and the fire department out. We're still going to, we're still going to push for getting August 12th as final, and then cutting over the very next day. So we're not letting our foot off the gas. The contractors and the team are not letting their foot off the gas. But if the board is willing to consider an extra 2 weeks, that would be a very gracious thing, and we would accept it. But we're still targeting August 12th.
Are you saying beyond September 10th or 2 weeks beyond August 12th?
I thought I heard an offer for beyond September 10th. We are going to target, we're not asking for beyond September 10th. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable. And like I said, we're still going to push for August 12th.
After you get the approvals, what remains to be done as far as constructions and testing and, will everything be, the just standby generator is then operational after the 8th or the 12th when you get the approval?
Yes, once we get all final approvals on August 12th, we will cut over to the new generator, and it's in operation. And generator number 5 is offline.
Fine. Okay, thank you.
Board members, other questions for Mr. Duong? Senator, Ms. Verdugo Peralta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to know, based on the fact that you stated in the document that the 5 existing bugs are going to be replaced by 2, what's the energy efficiency level of the new equipment?
Well, following the requirements for emissions, I can state that our new generator is within 0.01 of emissions for a PM, and
You're asking for the efficiency, not the emissions,
Right,
right?
correct.
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, did you have questions?
Your construction schedule, has it changed since the beginning? And you stated some of the causes for it.
You're talking about in terms of just a generator or overall for the entire campus?
You had a construction schedule to begin with,
Yes.
okay? And the job was supposed to be completed, what was the first date?
The project in terms of the campus-wide renovations
Are you asking specifically for the generator? Or for the broader,
For production.
for this generator, I think is the
Generator
most,
we're talking about. Yeah.
right. But there's a bigger project. That's why I think Mr. Duong was confused.
How many projects you got going?
Yes, for the generator, so August 1st was the compliance date. We're not going to meet that.
Was there a date before then? Yeah.
The construction schedule has slipped because of the generator.
Because of generator.
Yes, we've allocated our resources. We pulled our resources from the other areas of construction to focus on the generator. And so because of that, our construction schedule has slipped.
There's an April 1st, 2019 date. What was supposed to be accomplished at that date?
On April 1st, we were supposed to have set the generator, and we filed for a petition in March to extend that date to May 1st. So we slipped a month.
And why you do that?
We lost a month due to the rain delays.
And that was our last hearing for modification.
I'm just trying to get rid of my next question, that's why I asked. And then from that date, you slipped because of the rain, the wet weather.
That's
That was
correct.
your reason for that.
That's right.
And the next date completion date was what?
The next milestone date completion date is August 1st.
August 1st. And why are you slipping that date?
Our primary delays are due to a 5-week loss in construction schedule due to the fire department requesting a design change to their previously approved drawings.
Was that the fire department or plan check?
It's fire department plan check.
Fire department plan check.
Right.
And they wanted to change it from 2 inches to 2.5 inches.
That's correct.
And it was resolved back to 2 inches.
That's correct.
And how much time delay was that? And what was the purpose of the delay?
That was 5 weeks of delay.
All right, could you continue other construction pads and other associated design requirements while that delay was going on?
No, we couldn't, because in order to, if we proceeded with our original design, it would have required us to tear out all the underground utilities and the existing pad that we had already poured if the fire department had not allowed us to keep the original design.
So everything stopped at that point in time for 5 weeks.
Everything stopped.
Nothing was being done at the job.
Nothing's been done. There's peripheral work that's not associated with the generator, but we stopped work.
I see. Well, you said the city approved the project 2018, March.
That's OSHPD approved the,
Can you point to where that might be? And oh, go ahead, if you know it.
Knows where it's at. Go ahead.
Are you referring to the, sorry, this is John, are you referring to the March 2018 approval?
yeah, March
That's the broader renovation project from the city.
And there was,
That's not the generator-specific approval.
okay,
from the city.
and generally speaking, the city approved the overall project March 2018. yes,
Correct.
no? Okay. What departments within the city, plan check, building safety, et cetera?
that was building safety plan check.
Building safety plan check.
No, that would have been entitlement approval in March 2018. They would have been separately going through, OSHPD will generally govern building plans at that point in time, not necessarily the city of Los Angeles.
So it's more than building safety. What other departments participate before this approval is granted that you know of?
So that would, if I,
That's the planning commission is primarily who we work with to get the entitlements.
And they sign off.
They sign up for the project in general, but the generator was not part of that process.
Okay, was the fire department's participation considered during that time?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Was the fire department participation in the initial sign-off, was that considered at that time?
The generator was not part of the entitlements at that time. It's in terms of the order for abatement.
Okay, thank you.
One moment, I wanted to get an overall sense of timing before we proceeded through lunch. Mr. Hines, will you have any other witnesses today?
we will not.
Okay, and Ms. Dean, will you have any witnesses?
We will not, but we do have an engineer available.
Thank you very much. Ms. Verdugo Peralta, you have questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In all of the levels of inspections that you had to get approval from various departments, did you have to get also approval from the local utility and have the service planner come out there and inspect and either approve or deny or tell them what their issues were?
Not part of the generator construction.
Thank you.
Mr. Balagopalan has a question.
Is there a requirement to test the engine after it's installed to meet demonstrate compliance with the rule limit? Are you aware?
Can you rephrase that?
To demonstrate compliance with the rule limit, the reason you're putting the new generator is because the old one did not comply with Rule 1470, I think specifically of PM. So is there a requirement to your knowledge on the permit to do testing after the unit is installed?
I don't know. I need to check that.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question, Mr. Hines?
No, I have a copy of the permit. If that's helpful, I can, would you? No, and I do not believe there is a requirement for any source test or test to, after it's been installed, but the district may have a view on that, but generally I don't think so. It's a certified engine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator?
Excuse
So
me.
the two things that are happening there, seismic and a generator. Seismic, trying to be in compliance with the state requirement,
That's correct.
okay? And so could that work have continued while you're trying to get approval from the engine?
Yes, it's a separate project and it is continuing.
It was and still is continuing,
Yes, it is.
okay.
Ms. Brewer, did you have something to add?
Actually, Ms. Dean had another question.
Ms. Steen, you have a question?
Yes, under the proposed order, or proposed findings, excuse me, on page, can I direct you to page 9? This is under A, paragraph A. So can you confirm if the original December order had the annual operation of the emergency generator shall not exceed 200 hours per calendar year?
I believe that's what it said originally.
Okay. And here you've reduced that to 100 hours per calendar year?
Correct.
Okay. And then also in the next sentence, can you please read that?
Respondent shall maintain.
Oh, sorry, starting with weekly.
Still in A.
Oh, weekly testing of the emergency generator shall not exceed 1 hour per week.
Are you comfortable with changing that to 1 hour per month?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Where was that? That's line 5 and 6?
Just to be clear, if we were talking about the original condition, I think that the original condition, the original stipulated order specified weekly testing of the emergency generator shall not exceed 1 hour per week. The proposed conditions that we submitted would have said weekly testing of the emergency generator shall not exceed 45 minutes per week.
Yes.
Okay, so sorry, I pointed my witness to the wrong
Okay, I was
section.
very
That's-
confused
that's-
for a
That's
moment.
absolutely my fault. I was pointing to the original one, so.
So what's the question? Is it 1 hour per month or 45 minutes per month?
Well,
Yeah. What are you?
we can accept 1 hour per month. We had proposed 45 minutes per week. We had originally received a condition that was 1 hour per week. We had suggested we could live with 45 minutes per week, and we will accept the proposal for 1 hour per month.
Thank you for that clarification.
And again, I apologize.
And Senator has a
One final
follow-up.
question, Madam Chair. The seismic work will continue when and if the generator has been approved at that target date, the new target date.
Are you asking when the
I'm
new?
asking you whether or not the seismic work, retrofit work will continue, yes or no?
Yes, the seismic work is
So
continuing.
they'll continue for, when is the anticipated date for that to be?
The anticipated date, I'd have to check with you, but we're going through the end of next year for the seismic completion.
Very good, thank you.
Can you tell us, I don't know if we have anything in the record on this. Has the generator been, well, other than for, including maintenance and testing, how much has the generator been used, the existing generator been used over the pendency of the order, if you know?
I don't know the exact number on that.
Has it run for emergency purposes? Do you know?
I don't know that. I'm primarily focused on construction.
Okay.
Can I understand that it won't be testimony, but can I give some insight into that question?
If it's evidentiary,
If you need it, we can.
why don't you tell me, and then we can see if we
right.
need a witness.
I believe the logs reflect that it is operated for a little less than 10 hours. Of that, one of the requirements of the order was to separately log if there was non-maintenance and testing. I believe that there was approximately 1 hour or 2 hours in that range for non-maintenance and testing. So we have a total of, again, under 10 hours with 1 or 2 hours, and that was associated with something having to do with construction.
And that was reflected in reports given to the
No,
district?
those are logs maintained by the medical center.
Okay. I don't think I need to have a witness in order to make a finding of good cause, but I kind of wanted to know. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Duong? No? Okay, thank you very much. So no other witnesses.
Thank you. No other witnesses.
Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Dean, you said you had an engineer available if we have questions?
We do.
Okay. Board members, would anyone like to hear from a district engineer on any issues before we move on? Mr. Balagopalan?
You want to introduce him? Oh, I can go ahead. No, I didn't recognize the engineer because he had a beard on, but anyway. I assume it's Mr. Oliveras.
Yes. Could you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Roy Olivers, it's Olivares.
And did you take the oath today to testify?
Yes.
I was just, the question I had, I think the permit to construct and it was a permit to construct and operate that was issued?
Yes, hold on, can you let me look at that? Yes, it was a permit to construct and operate.
And there's no requirement to test the engine to make sure it meets the requirements of the rule?
Which rule?
The rule applied, 1470?
Not specifically. There's a condition 17 which talks about replacing the filter media, which is part of the rule. It's a condition 17. There's really no other specific conditions on 1470 other than the emission limit of PM of 0.02 grams per acres per hour, which is listed as permit condition 23. The DPF is CARB certified. And we have the executive order condition on there where they have to maintain condition on the executive order, which is basically repeated on the permit conditions. So those are basically the monitoring testing requirements, but no specific testing for PM or anything like that.
So in your opinion, with the DPF, the engine will meet the rule requirement limits
Yes.
without testing?
Without source testing?
Yeah.
Yes. It's like I said, it's already went to the executive, CARB executive order testing, and it meets at least 85% reduction PM, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, or Mr. Hines, if you have any questions from
No
Mr.
questions.
Oliveras? Okay. Mr. Balagopalan has another.
Does the district plan to be there during the startup or subsequently? Do you know if there's any discussion for the inspector or for you to be there to witness the engine in operation?
Typically for emergency standby generators, district engineers are not there for initial startups or any internal testing they do. We only go there if there's a compliance test or a source test. And typically we don't require a compliance source test on emergency standby generators.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oliveras. I'm going to ask then at this time if any member of the public wishes to be heard in this matter. And I see none. Mr. Hines, if you can give us a brief closing statement.
Thank you all. We appreciate everyone's time today. I think what you've heard today demonstrates the effort that installing one of these generators takes, not only just the physical work, but the level of approvals. I think you've also heard today that the medical center has really gone above and beyond. This is a large construction project. It is a difficult project. There has been hiccups along the way, but they have worked hard to address those through committing additional resources, working hard with their regulators to make sure that the appropriate plans are approved that meet all the requirements, and they've been diligent in that process. While we originally hoped to not be here today, the fact that all the physical work has been completed and that we are now into the testing and approval process, and that you heard testimony that the medical center is still targeting August 12th, though there's a risk that could, of course, end up slipping a little bit further as we go through the testing process and as the approvals and as those are scheduled. The bottom line is I think the board can find good cause for this short modification for final compliance date. And again, we appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dean, your closing.
After hearing the evidence presented today, the facility has presented that it is doing its due diligence to make this project their priority with the overtime and pulling their resources for this particular project. And the fire department's revisions delay appears to be the primary delay. With the additional mitigation to reduce the engine emissions, the district does not oppose the proposed extension of the final compliance date to September 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Balagopalan.
I thought there was some discussion whether you wanted to change the testing to 45 minutes per week to 1 hour per month. There are no proposed changes to the findings then?
I think that is a proposed change, correct?
Yes.
And it was agreed upon by Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Or to, yeah, change it to an hour
1 hour per
per
month.
month, okay. Okay, if I can, I think we can
Balagopalan.
find good cause in granting the variance in the, and extending the compliance date to September 10. I'm actually open to, just to be on the safe side, to until the end of September, but I'll let the board members decide on that. I think they have, the engine is, as we heard testimony, it's already installed, but they cannot run it, operate it until they get all the approvals from the respective departments, the fire department, OSHPD, and so, and they scheduled it, so hopefully they'll get the approval. We also heard testimony the delay was due to issues related to fire safety that the fire department had concerns with. Looks like it took a while for them to resolve that. So, and I think it was beyond their reasonable control. And I think looks like they've resolved that amicably, and hopefully during the inspection, no new issues arise that may require some changes or delay in approval. And for that reason, I'm, kind of open to giving another additional 2 weeks. I don't see an issue in that. I think we heard testimony the engine will be up and running mid-August, and will cut off, and it will be running, and the existing generator will be taken offline. So, but for just in case there's some issues, because we heard also that this is kept referring to a black box that came from factory defaults and settings, and so some of the things have to be modified, and some tuning has to be done, and with the load bank testing and so forth. So but Mr. Dong was very, on the other hand, he was, he has done a lot of this apparently, and he doesn't anticipate any problem in doing this. It doesn't anticipate any problem. So while I'm open to it, extending another 2 weeks, but I think we can find good cause to go forward with the order.
Thank you, Mr. Balagopalan. I agree, but first I just wanted to be clear, we have two new board members, that in fact our standard of review for modification is indeed a good cause, and I just wanted to point out that in our order, and in fact in all orders for abatement, we do have a paragraph that states that requests for modifications may be made, and the hearing board may modify a modified stipulated order for abatement with or without the stipulation, here we do have stipulation, of the parties upon a showing of good cause. Therefore, I'm sorry.
They may have not opposed, but we did not have a stipulation on the modification.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like they're not opposing, but okay, no stipulation, but regardless, with or without a stipulation, the standard for us is in fact good cause. I just wanted to point that out. And I just wanted to say, I agree, for all the reasons Mr. Balagopalan stated. Usually, we do have concerns. I would have concerns that it took a month to put the petition in, that we're hearing this request for extension a day before the deadline. However, in this case, and usually we want that because we want to be able to modify the order to make it go as expeditiously as possible. But I'm convinced, given everything we heard, that it has gone as expeditiously as possible regardless, based on the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been spent, the resources that have been moved from the greater project to this particular project and to the order, based on the fact that in the petition on July 9th, all of these dates were put in for what was anticipated for approvals, and virtually all of them have come come as anticipated and are checked off. There's very little left, and everything that's within the control of the respondent has been done at this point. And so I can still find good cause. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Ms. Verdugo-Peralta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having been on both sides of the issue through the planning department and being on the receiving end and waiting for all of the inspections, I empathize with you because we had to do that various times, and then being on the energy services side, trying to help the facility go through the process, and knowing that you can have a bump in the road, especially when you have a 5-week delay. That's huge. My only comment, because I do find good cause and I do agree with the fact that we can go forward with it, but my only question here, which wasn't answered, was what the level of efficiency was, because that does equate to the amount of reduction of emissions. So in the future, if we ever meet again, I would like to know that information. Thank you.
Thank you. And other thoughts, and also we should discuss, Mr. Balagopalan did put on the table the potential of 2 additional weeks, and whether we have any thoughts on that one way or the other. But would anyone like to weigh in before that? I'm also, could go sort of either way on that. I feel that the respondent has laid out a good case for this being completed way earlier than September 10th. However, we have now been here twice on a modification, and we certainly would like to avoid having to come a third time for a modification, and I am 100% sure the respondent would like to, the facility would like to avoid that. And given that most of the work that needs to be done on their end has been done, and there's such uncertainty, I don't think I'm opposed to extending it the additional 2 weeks, but I'd love to hear from anyone else as to whether. Dr. Bernstein?
It seems to be prudent to extend it another 2 weeks. This way we don't have to laboriously go through a hearing once again. Thank you for your commitment to get it done. There's no doubt that the good cause has been shown today, and thank you.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta?
I also agree with the extension because of the fact that there may be other issues that do come up that you don't foresee. And I also want to commend you on the hard work that has been done, especially working through the weekends and extra hours, so that there was such a huge commitment. So I'm not opposed to extending it the 2 weeks.
Thank you. And also, we did not hear evidence, well, I won't say it. We don't have evidence on how much the generator has run, so I won't add that. And so, I don't know, I mean, it was my order. I can make a motion. If you'd like to make a motion, I'd leave it to you. But were you thinking, or was the board thinking thus actually 2 weeks to be September 24th as opposed to the 10th?
Oh, 2 weeks, yeah.
And then we would keep our jurisdiction. I see that that's been proposed to be extended to September 30th, which I think would be fine. If a modification is necessary, we'll hear that well before September 30th.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. If there's no other discussion, then I will make the motion since it was originally my order. In the matter of South Coast Air Quality Management District versus Providence Tarzana Medical Center, case number 6128-1, I move that we grant the requested modification and extension of the order for abatement as is found in Exhibit B. We make the following changes, and that is on page 9, 1A of the order. Line 6 would be changed from not exceed 45 minutes per week to not exceed 1 hour per month. So it would read, weekly testing of the emergency generator shall not exceed 1 hour per month. Further modifications would include line 20, which is 1D. The date of September 10th would then become September 24th, and similarly on line 22, with regard to condition 1E, that would be September 24th as well, from September 10th to September 24th. I would further move that we would keep our jurisdiction till September 30th, and that completes my motion.
Change, I think it says stipulated order, change, since it,
So is the order no longer stipulated between the parties?
It can remain, it can say stipulated. I would also like to make sure that Ms. Dean's name is added up front.
Thank you, I didn't notice that. Ms. Dean should definitely be added. We'll say afterwards, Ms. Dean deserved a very good grade. Okay, so that completes my motion now, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Balagopalan seconds. Any discussion on the motion? No, seeing none. Senator, how do you vote? Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan votes.
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. I truly hope that this will be all over. And Ms. Dean, outstanding job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For a first-year law student, excellent job. For anyone, but for a first-year law student. Any other business, board members? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.